the standards of practice. All right, this could either be a very long conversation or a very short conversation. Pardon? Yeah. Yeah. So the standards of practice is a bit of a textbook about what the Feldenkrais method is, and there's small sections about what it is not, which I think are okay. The political context of this was, so you can see it's started in 1992. It came out of North America, and then the IFF adapted it, and we adapted it and adopted it a couple of years later. And the context in America back then was that Feldenkrais practitioners needed to get this thing called a license to touch. And so there was all this confusion about, was it massage or was it not? And they did slide in under massage, legislation for massage, and all this sort of stuff. So it was a messy political environment in the States, which is why it's quite precise. Is it? Okay. Well, we don't have the license to touch here. Well, not with a capital L, not in legislation. However, it's there. So those of you who've had a read of the standards of practice, are there any questions or comments? Disagreements? Agreements? Clear enough? Yep, Alison? In awareness through movement lessons, yep.
People engage in precisely structured movement explorations.
Yeah. That relatively, yeah, all things being relative, yeah. Yeah, I reckon they are. There might not be precise. There might be a lot of creativity in, the sequence of events sometimes, or there might. Oh, and I know what you mean. Like, say the lesson, for example, this morning, when Linda looked at me and said, "Is that basically are you being deliberately vague?" And I said, "Yes." So you could say that's not precise. However, in the vagueness, there's a precision.
Yeah, but also it's precisely structured movement explorations. You could say it's that phrase rather than...
Okay, the whole lot. Yeah. You want to give me an example when you think we're not precise?
Oh, no. Sorry, what I mean is I'm agreeing with you.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay. Good. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Sorry, in that sense, a lesson follows a structure, and it's pretty precise in that structure.
Yeah, and with the word exploration, you could say that's a paradox, isn't it? Exploration of precise structuring, but the student's experience might not be that it's precise or structured. Yeah. Might feel totally random and ridiculous.
Philippa?
No, it doesn't. No, that's a Zoranism. That's a Zoranism.
I think if you want to talk, you can hear the book.
Okay, so this is sort of like a boundary setting thing, the practice standards. And it's got some reasonably nice phrases in there that you might want to pinch and work into, your brochure. Yeah. It's a guild document. And do we still pay? These guys are student members of the guild? You are members of the guild. You are student members of the guild. This is your document. Do with as you wish. Use it for toilet paper or anything. No. A bit more respect than toilet paper. Yeah. Any other questions about the standards? There is some nice phrasing in there. Now, the Code of Professional Conduct, those of you who have been in a profession that deals with human beings, or you've been in an organisation that has accountability, know that this is a pretty standard kind of document. And again, forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but in another organisation that I'm involved with, where there's been, let's say, some less than nice behaviour from people higher up in the organisation, they've brought in a code of conduct, and it's tipped some people into an absolute pit of despair. Did I tell you about this? Yeah. So I'm kind of shocked that people were shocked by it. They didn't have one. They're shocked that, yeah, they need one, and then they've got one. And it's complicated. However, it's made me realise that I'd assumed that these things were kind of a regular event, that this is just part of the course, what you have. So I guess, and what I'm saying is that if you find this a bit restrictive or prescriptive or something, I'm kind of understanding now that there is another viewpoint to codes of conduct. So anything in there? I remember when these were drawn up, and these are quite old as well. They used to be in a little booklet. I have a feeling that I might have been involved years ago when they were revised, October 1997, National Committee. I might have even been the president then or something incredibly responsible. There were a few little things like, when can I say that I won't treat you, I won't work with you, I won't give you a lesson? When is that? When would be in breach of professional conduct to say, Julietta comes to my door and says, I want a lesson with you, and I say, no, I don't give lessons to people like you.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Yeah. So it's in their best interest. So I remember someone saying, what about racism? So if I said, well, I'm not going to give Julietta a lesson because she's Spanish.
That's racist.
And you'd all go, yeah, fair enough, Spanish, they're dirty feet. Like, whoa, no way. Or they laugh too much or something like that. So that's as a reason is not kosher, if I can say that, pun intended. You can't deny somebody a service on the basis of race or gender, and I think that's in here somewhere. And we debated that a lot. Yep. However, if you have a response to somebody, this is where it gets tricky. If there's something about Julietta that reminds me of some really traumatic thing in my life, and I know that I can't help you because I'm just so triggered by the fact that, a gregarious, outgoing Spanish woman in the park, 6 years ago, stole all my money, and every time I look at you, I think of all my money being stolen, and I get into such a tiz. Yeah, I don't know, because you're just sitting there. You're in front of me, and I think you can take it. You know where I'm coming from. And I can't get over that. My reaction to you, and I know it's my problem. Then I have to then it's not in her best interest to work with me because I can't get over my problem with the race or something like that. Do you see what I mean?
I can pay you more.
You can pay me more. Yeah. So it gets tricky where you have to think, with the best intentions in the world, you put your prejudices aside. When you really can't overcome them because of some, like in a trauma like that, then you have to recognise that it's not in that student's best interest to work with someone who's going to be actually really hostile to them or ineffective for some reason. Am I saying something controversial, or do you follow?
I think so.
Yeah.
Because other people would say, I don't want to offer services to white people because I was mugged by one, and every time I see one, I feel vulnerable. And that, sometimes is the basis of prejudice, putting it. You know, what happened to you with one person, you then say the whole group of people.
Dentist.
I think it's a bit tricky.
Huh?
Surely your obligation should then be equal to then turn and say, however, here is a list of X, Y, Z in the local area.
Yeah.
Are equally suited to your need.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, do you ever refer anyone you go, I don't think maybe this is the best modality for you at this time? Modality, or it's not really what?
Modality is a different question. So if we stick to this scenario first and just... Why did I do that? I'm such a good girl. I just have to say. Yes, you can.
You might
So
not
I
know
think...
until they work in the door, though.
Yeah.
It may be, you know, once they, you might not know.
It is very tricky. And Linda, I'm really glad that Linda has opposed what I said, because it's worthy of it. Because you need to be really, it is a really fine line between, am I doing this for your benefit, or because it's too hard for me, or is that the same thing? And where does this decision lie? And when does it tip into discrimination, and when does it tip into actual care? Yeah, that's right. And so here's where it starts to get into what's the order of magnitude of my problem. And if it extends to, a significant proportion of the population, I've got a problem, and I really need to think about my practice. And I need to work. Either way, even if it's just this very specific, it's only slimly built young women who laugh a lot, who are Spanish and who do theatre improvisation. So it's very specific. I have a very specific PTSD. I still need to take responsibility that I've got a problem and I need to deal with my problem. Yeah. A lot of counselling. Yeah, I would, as a practitioner, and I realised I had this problem, this reaction, then I need to work with myself. And if I can't solve it, then I need to have all these other strategies to make it okay for diminutive, fun-loving, improvising Spanish women who've emigrated to Australia to not come. Yeah. You just don't like. Yeah. Yeah. We could chuck the box because I think this is.
I had a yoga studio there, and when I just opened the yoga studio, a man came. He went, I want to join the group. He was a guy, he never did yoga before. And I went, yeah, sure. And he walked in and he didn't have a t-shirt on the first session. I went, oh, okay, you need to have a t-shirt on. But he went through another and another really, really complicated situation for me. The things that we talked about, the socks before, his feet really smell. So everybody was really away from him. And I put an incense just in front of him. I was trying to give all this, saying, yeah, come on, you really makes me struggle with my group.
Yeah.
And he's gotten the lack of awareness or whatever.
Yeah.
So, and I have to work a lot on me because he wants to keep coming.
Yeah.
He wants to keep coming. And it was a really big situation for me. How am I going to do this? So I have to talk to him a lot, that it wasn't me, or it was me, but also his behavior, it was so tricky. Yeah. So challenged.
Yeah. So did you actually say to him, look?
Yeah.
You know,
I went to talk to him and I
Yeah.
said, you can't really, you know, your feet smell.
yeah,
You need to do something first. And then you can walk with a t-shirt and you can really snore so loud. Like he did everything. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, what, you really want to come to yoga, or you just laughing at me? Like,
yeah,
he went, no, it's really nice, but I have to work out. So he disappeared for a month, and then he came again. He was really quiet. The feet didn't smell again. Oh, what's that?
well done.
Yeah,
It's a great example. It's a better
yeah.
example than having a phobia about diminutive Spanish women. About, you know, that there are standards around what you expect, because actually in that instance you're looking after the other students,
Yeah,
and that
because
is your
yeah,
responsibility.
it was
That's
all
part of a
women.
code of professional conduct.
It was all women in all.
Yeah.
So he wasn't really make a big difference as well. Like walking with no t-shirt with all women lying to do yoga.
Yeah,
No one feels
yeah,
relaxed.
Yeah.
At the first
and
stage.
it's when you find yourself in that situation, practicing that conversation, practicing that kind of feedback with somebody else is really helpful first. I don't know if whether you did that or not, but you know, you've got great supports with each other. And so when you have to have a conversation like that with somebody about, you know, it's solution focused, it's kind of pointing out what the issue is, pointing out the impact that it has on other people, and then saying, let's generate some solutions around this. Wash your feet, wear a shirt, blah blah blah. But putting it into the context of the impact that, you know, you don't know, but for a woman that's really intimidating.
Yeah.
And he'll go, oh, I didn't know, or something like that. I mean,
No,
maybe
he
he does,
wasn't.
maybe he does know, but who knows?
Yeah, no, that was
Yeah. So that's a really good example. Any other kind of tricky things you either had in your past or you could imagine? Jane, you want to do a backhand pass?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I could imagine it could happen occasionally where you have a client and you might see that client for a while, but you just don't connect with that person.
Yep.
And it seems like they're just getting nothing out of coming. So in that sort of situation, what are different strategies to handle that?
So if you honestly think that they're not getting anything out of it, that's the conversation you have. So what are you getting out of it?
Yeah.
Are you getting anything out of it? So you have to think about how you want to put that question, as a yes, no, or a vague question. I know you might have a comment, Jenny. If you are worried that it's you know, that you have real antibodies to this person, and let's face it, we all meet people we don't like. What do we do about it in real life? We generally avoid them. If it's a client and it gets to the point where you can't work with them because of your dislike, whether it's rational, irrational, whatever it is, it evokes that clause about benefit. And that's when that's the second scenario that Anna's touched on, is offering them another practitioner and say, look, if they say, no, I'm not really getting anything out of it, I said, look, you know, sometimes, you know, you might find benefit with someone who works in a different way to me, blah, 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 and refer on. That would be my first port of call. Maybe, but, you know, we can be quite good at hiding antibodies. They're not, and there's all sorts of secondary gain stuff as well about people come back because they have to, you know, that their mum bought 6 trips and they have to take all the trips, or, you know, whatever it is, or, yeah, you'd be surprised. People's motivations can be quite weird. Yeah. Yeah, as well, yeah. And when you've done your best to overcome either a prejudice or an irrational dislike or anything else, you've done your absolute best, refer on. If you think that the Feldenkrais method is not for them, you can refer on as well. Like, you know, if you think that someone needs counselling, And that's part of ethical conduct, is knowing what this is not, which fits into the practice standards. We are not counsellors, you know, as a base Feldenkrais practitioner. You might be a Feldenkrais practitioner and a counsellor. Then you have to work out that the student knows which one you are. Like, so because I have a physio background and a Feldenkrais practitioner, that can get really blurry for people. So it's important that you and they have an understanding about what's going on here. So certainly if they think that I'm a physio, they'll think that I'm going to fix them, because that's the model. Very, very crudely put, There's a different paradigm, especially in musculoskeletal physio, that the problem will be treated and therefore fixed. It's more of a medical model. Now, a lot of physios would argue it's not true, and certainly in my area of physio, which is neurological physio, that's not the case, because I can't fix somebody's head injury or stroke. So it's even blurrier in my area, because neurophysio is not fixing, it's working with somebody, and it's more about teaching and stuff as well. So you have to really think about what boundaries you want to create around any other skills that you do. So you're a reflexologist with the foot. Do you slide some reflexology in there with Feldenkrais? And if you know, that's a no. If you want to slide in some Feldenkrais thinking in your yoga class, that might be fine. You know, this is very grey area. I'm looking at my colleagues. Have you got any? Do you slide your acoustic engineering expertise into your Feldenkrais? Which way who charges more, an acoustic engineer or a Feldenkrais practitioner? Yep. Right. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So it's always a question of being clear in your own mind, I think. Like, now I'm blurring, now I'm not blurring. And then it's clear for them, is this a massage where I just want you to relax and go to sleep and relax, versus an FI where, yes, I want you to relax. However, I do kind of want you to pay attention. Because what we do can for the uninitiated, can feel like, yeah.
Susan, is that what's meant by ethical principle 3, number 4?
It is the number 4.
A member teaching that for clearly informing the student that he, she is not receiving training.
That's different.
What is that?
That means that when you give somebody a private lesson, it's not a professional training program. So if you're running a series of ATM classes, it's not going to qualify someone to become an ATM teacher.
Oh.
So it's not this. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And it's still a fear for us. We're dealing with somebody, you know, some training programs starting in China. And from my academic experience in China, there's a different perception about kind of ownership and training and IP. Well, there is. You know, like, I can say I'm racist, but it's just the fact. It's a different way of looking at things. You know, I've tried to say to this trainer that's working there, saying, if you think that when you hand over this material, that's not just going to go and everybody's going to start running everything, you're a naive idiot. I mean, the person is a naive idiot. But so as universities, when we're setting up programs in China, we go in knowing that that's going to happen. Like, just forget it. You might not get a lot of repeat business, because once you've handed over the student resources, you know, I'm not judging. It's just how it is. It's just different. Oh, wow. Yeah. It's just a testament to her skill, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, with no sort of standards or anything. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah,
So-
that's what that one means.
So I run counselling, training and counselling workshops, and the workshops
Yep.
they don't.
Sorry,
get
we just got someone talking in the microphone.
so in the workshops they don't get a certificate to be able to pass any of that on. The workshop's a workshop that is about them and their participation in it, whereas the training costs more to come to.
Yeah,
because they get the intellectual property to take away.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more theory involved and whatever, and you just have to be really, really clear. In my experience, people have respected that pretty well.
Yeah.
But I am very, very clear about it as well.
Yeah, and that's a great example that what we've set up in this room is that the training scenario. You're getting the material. You're going to be our colleagues and our peers, and we do the pieces of paper and we do the standards and all this sort of stuff because it's different to the class. Now, what is interesting for us is when I graduated, there wasn't anybody else. Nobody was very experienced. But now there are a lot of students out there who actually have done a whole lot more ATMs than you have. As you know, I was saying when we were doing the Feldy Fundamental workshop to promote this training, there was this fantastic older woman who rocked up. I can't remember her name. And she's been doing ATMs as long as I have. You know, she's in her 70s, and actually she does ATM every day. So I'm very confident, and I'm not proud of it. I don't do ATM every day. So actually, probably she's done more ATM than I have as a really experienced practitioner. So it's very interesting, isn't it? But she hasn't got a certificate, and she has no interest in getting a certificate. She was one of the most potent sort of influences in the room in that public workshop because she could say, this has saved my life, you know. She said it in such a classic, you know, Aussie woman's way of it wasn't a dramatic, this has saved my life. It's just like, this keeps me going, and it's, you know, it's saved, blah, blah, blah. And everyone went, were you at that workshop, Jane? No, maybe not. No. And I've never met her before. So she does Frank's tapes, and she goes to the odd public class and the odd practitioner's class. She's just got tapes and she just does something. So isn't that amazing? So that's the difference. She has no interest in teaching it. It's for her. So that clarity is fantastic. Anything else? Any other scenarios for your classes? Yes. Yeah, Lexine, sure. Yep. Do you mind talking into the box? Yep. Yep.
As a multidisciplinary approach to managing chronic pain. So that very clearly defines the roles, I guess, for
when you're working in a team.
Working in a team too.
Yeah.
And when you need possibly to refer on to others to work in with that team.
Yep.
Yeah. So
and we are often working with people with very complex needs, and being respectful of other disciplines is so important, and particularly so within the FI scenario where where I think it gets a bit blurrier about the difference between an FI and other hands-on kind of modalities, and where it's more instructional and there's more advice and all that kind of stuff. Because it's not uncommon that you'll give somebody homework or something that is contrary to what another discipline has said. And it could be in a very benign way. I mean, the most ridiculous conflict I've had, I told you a couple of days ago, was this sort of alternate therapist who told me off, rang me up to tell me off to stop doing it because I was doing reptilian and the kid was still at the fish stage or something. You can tell. I mean, I don't have a lot of respect for that. I don't have a lot of respect for the way she owned that boy's body. Actually, is what I don't have a lot of respect for. Like, who was she to say that this boy's body is actually not his, for starters, and that she's the boss of his body, basically. That's kind of what irritated me. But anyway, probably not. I'm very good at conflict outside of the arena. I actually said it wasn't, I said, I think we work in different ways and we have different understandings about the way people learn and move. If you find this really offensive, you know, I want to assure you that I'm not thinking in the way that you are. And what I'm thinking of is what this boy is asked about, which is that he wants to do blah, blah. He wants to climb trees again. And actually, he needs to get one leg up to do that. So I just went back to function and tried to root it in what his goals are. I mean, and I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened about whether she fell off the perch or what. But so it's about being respectful. If someone's coming to your ATM class and they come up afterwards and they say, oh, but, you know, my chiropractor's told me that when I have pain, that I need to put my back brace on and go really still. What do?
You respect them.
This is really confronting. Like, I'm really asking. You don't have to have an answer now. We can continue. This is a long conversation.
Yeah, but I think it's a relationship as well that you have with the person. If the first time that the person say that to you, you're not going to come out with a solution and say, don't do it, because you want to build a relationship, and the more confidence you have, probably you can say something about it, so the discussion is coming after, but or maybe never, but not definitely at the start.
Yeah.
More simply than that, if you're working with old people like 80 plus, they will say, I have pain in my back and I can't move it.
Right.
So what do you do?
Okay. Yeah. Okay, well, let's see how we can move around it.
Yes, exactly.
Or could you?
They won't
I mean, you could say with the chiropractor thing, because I'm going to offer some Feldy classes at a chiropractic centre.
That's fine.
And
I just pick chiropractic because I've
no,
been
but if
picking
someone
up physios.
said that, it's like we could say, well, again, this is a different approach, and that if you could try a movement with it on, and then you could try it off and do it, but so slowly, and any, you know, like use pain as the gauge of effort and not okay, and play with it, or imagine. I mean, you could apply those Feldy principles and encourage them to have a go at it.
Yep. Or imagine movement or something like that in the thing. I mean, I don't even know whether chiropractors give girdles or not. I know, do they? I say, well, I mean, I have a couple of clients who when they're really troubled, I say, well, why don't you go and put your sacral belt on for a while, you know, just to quieten their system down, because they get into such strife, you know. Yes, Jenny, you had...
Probably the first thing is to ask a question.
Yeah.
Is how long do you need to do that for to get relief? And does it help?
Yeah.
Have you tried A, B and C? Do they give you more or less relief?
Yeah.
Whatever. So that you start to engage them in the decision-making process.
Yeah, that's right. In a solution kind of way, so that they can start using these things according to what their experience is, rather than what someone's told them to do. But you don't want your thing about don't tackle it head on straight away. That's the kind of key as well, as sticking with the sort of quietly probing questions, get them to start thinking about that. And of course, then you can have a conversation with the chiropractor. Just ring him up, and him or her, and say, look, you know, this person has said this. They are coming to my class, and we are finding that some really gentle, controlled movements are helping. And I just wanted to let you know, and if we can have a bit of a conversation about that. Why not? But in a very respectful way, because they could become your greatest referrer. If they know that you're respectful and that you're not going to say, oh, what a crock of shit, don't go back there. That's not. If you want to know something to not do, don't do that. Oh, look, sometimes my face is like, they told you what? Oh,
So that's interesting.
Yeah, and actually the other day I very rarely give full-on advice to clients, but there's this young woman that comes to see me who's got chronic pain sorts of syndromes, and it's very sensitised, and she's very anxious. So it's hard to unpick the anxiety from the pain. And she's been having these, I'm sorry, this is we've all got a threshold. these bloody, she's been having this prolotherapy injections into her spine for like 15 years. And you ask her, we did all the stuff about how do you find them? Do they help? And she says, no, they don't. But when she gets anxious about her pain, she has to do something. She has to have something. And she's on a whole lot of mind-bending drugs anyway. And when this prolotherapy stuff is kind of her last resort. And I can't bear it. 15 years of this bullshit anyway. So even I'm not always tolerant. Sorry to say. How does that not surprise you? Oh, sometimes they inject glucose into joints, into the small joints of the back. I think this is glucose or something else. It's not a steroid even. Like, I just let that roll if people really like it. But I do what Jenny says and I ask, how do you find that? How do you feel afterwards? You know, do you notice a good effect? And does that help you function? And blah, blah, blah. But this one is just, and the person who does it, you know what the first thing was that he offered her? I'll bisect your iliopsoas. Like, you're just going to cut through them. So the guy is a complete whack job. So you can tell sometimes I'm not very respectful. There are just some things that you just have to go about. But just be careful. Well, who else would get away with bisecting who else would be godlike enough to do that sort of stuff? So, you know, in the far end of alternate, you know, I've never heard of anybody being offered to have their psoas completely severed, both sides. Anyway, there you go. So there's just some things maybe you're allowed to have an opinion about. Otherwise, keep your opinions to yourself. Like Chelsea, the whack job.
It's like a lab rat.
Huh?
Oh, it's horrible.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just thinking, like, I don't know if you'd remember her, Jenny, but when myself and Beck did the fundamentals course, there was a lovely lady in there who'd been told, if I remember, it was about 15 years ago by her chiropractor, she had to sleep on her back for her neck. And the poor woman hadn't slept well for 15 years.
Oh dear. Yeah, that's a pretty...
But they just take it for gospel, what other modalities tell them. And I mean, I cop it at work quite constantly as well, of like, my physio said this or so-and-so
Absolutely.
said this.
It's not limited to one profession.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, a lady like you were just saying, I managed to help her with her trigger finger, and she came back the next week and she hadn't had it. Then 6 weeks later she came and she'd had the surgery to cut it because it was booked in.
Yeah.
So it's trying to, you know, I purposely went back to it and asked her about it, but it still didn't click in her head that she didn't need to do it and that there was other options.
Jenny said to her, you know, can you sleep on your back? No, I can't. How can you get yourself comfortable? Well, on my stomach. But the chiropractor said, I can't do that. And Jenny said, well, but that's where you find comfort. So she slept that night and she was like a different person. She. If you need someone to convert you.
Yeah.
Oh, no, just that in that situation when this lady who'd been sleeping on her back because a chiropractor had told her that that's what she had to do, Jenny said, you know, do you find this comfortable? No. How do you find comfort? Well, on my stomach, but I'm not allowed to. And Jenny it wasn't like, yes, do that. She just left it, well, you know, it's a possibility that you could sleep on your stomach and find comfort. And she did, and she came back the next day. You should have seen her. She was a totally different, Anyway.
So
for me, that was about not being told. It was empowering her to make a decision for herself.
Yeah.
To find her own comfort.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't you shouldn't or you can't. It was just, it's a possibility. And she found it for herself. It's great.
And that's the power of the question.
Yeah.
Because it puts the experience, the decision-making and the answer back on the person and their experience. She's quite skilled, Jenny.
Yeah.
You know, she's not bad, actually. Yeah, so and you don't need to, in that sense, we don't even have to comment on the chiropractor. The fact that it's 20 years ago means you're probably safe to, they're not around anymore to offend. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, it's astonishing the shit that we put on people, and I'm sure there are people who feel offended or feel diminished or something by something I've said, or I've given them advice that they've taken for gospel and I didn't mean it like that, or the shit happens. We're just trying to minimize the shit. Yeah.
Question here with the presenting Feldenkrais workshops to the general public. In the second, when they say advertising should encompass the functional aspect of the method.
Sorry, which number is this?
This is the second one, the ethical principle number 8.
Oh, yeah.
The second sentence. So advertising should encompass the functional aspect of the method and describe the whole person and not body parts.
Yes.
Watching and seeing a lot of Feldenkrais for the lower back, or Feldenkrais for the neck, or Feldenkrais, that's made me think.
Yeah.
But I'm probably more in Spain because I'm looking always Barcelona, what they do in there, and it's all about specific. So I think they're looking for gather a specific group of people.
Yeah.
But I don't know, that's how we're reading that.
Yeah.
And then people go attract. But that means...
Yeah, so this is a really good one that you picked up, and I'm glad you did because we talked about it. Jenny, this is one that's probably... I'll let Jenny talk about it.
This one concerns me. I don't often do workshops about body parts. I tend to be more functional, I think, in my themes. But you're absolutely right. In terms of making a connection with our target market, we have to mention the issue that has meaning to them. And if their life is revolving around back pain or sore neck or sore knee, then mentioning that in the advertising is just common sense.
Yeah.
When we get them in, of course, we want them to understand that we're not going to concentrate on the knee. We're going to concentrate on how they organise themselves that may have been contributing to the problem and how they could do it differently. And so, I hope that will be modified in
the next
new
iteration.
Versions.
Yeah.
And on that section, I think also there's one that says, you have to make it clear in your advertising that you're not offering a training program. Yeah. Well, advertisements are only so big and there's only so many words you can fit, and there is no way I'm going to put in a paragraph that specifically says this is not a training program. But it does come out of that fear in the past that particularly when the first round of practitioners were new and inexperienced, that somebody else would get the tapes or come to a workshop and start running classes. And I don't think that's such an issue. And we've got our trademarks and things that allow us to say to people, excuse me, you can't actually use that word unless you're a qualified practitioner. So.
Yeah. And I think it's there is something that would step into that, where if you advertise your workshop as a treatment for ankle sprains, that's kind of different. If you say this is really good for balance and for getting, both mobility and stability in your ankles so that you can run better, you can see that's different. Because it's about the context of your ankle in function in daily life. So it's not like that all of that has to be in the title, but you can say, come and learn about your ankle joint. Your ankle joints on fire or something could be the title. And then underneath you've got this blurb that makes it clear that what we're interested in is working with ankles to the best of their functions. Yeah. Obsessed with lower back and neck. Yep. Yeah. Well, bloody Frank. Yeah, the myth of the core. Frank Wildman flogs the core like you wouldn't believe. Joseph Della Grotti flogged this core business. Drives me crackers.
And Zoran's run some stuff on with core in the title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah. Absolutely. So this will be changed. this is going to be changed. And that's one of the ones that's been flagged to change, because it's nonsensical to not talk in a language and a motivation for 80% of the population. You know, look at the tapes, free your neck, free your back.
Yeah.
We do.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we have to be very specific around motivations. When we're as well known as yoga in like 2,000 years' time, because that's how long it's taken yoga, then we'll just say yoga, and people are like, oh yeah, I know, that's really good for, it's good for my mind, it's good for my bowels, it's good for my everything. Yeah. No. So yeah. And then when you've got them on the floor and they're in your class and they're noticing that their neck is freer, then they can notice, oh, when my neck is freer, my ankles are freer. When my ankles are freer, I can run faster. And it's up to you as the teacher to then broaden them out of that very focused goal to this general thing. And that's, you know, getting back to Cliff's thesis, that's what came out, is they all had a very specific reason. They had back pain, they had sprained ankles, they had headaches or whatever. That very quickly, once that they learned how to manage that, and or it disappeared. Didn't always disappear, but they learned to manage it. Then all these other things that you were interested in the other day started popping up and being of more interest. Like, how do I function better as a human being, sort of thing. So that's the evolution of it. But by all means, get them in, because their low back's dicking up. Because that's why pain is painful. It's the best motivator in the world.
Yeah. When I first started my practice, one of the early things I did was to buy a series of ads in the local paper, and part of the package was that I got an interview and an advertorial once in the 6 months. Yeah. And I'd been incredibly careful about how I titled the work and about benefits rather than problems.
Yeah.
And the interviewer, the journalist, came and talked to me and took photos and went away, and I was absolutely mortified the next week when the paper came out, said something about say goodbye to pain. And I thought, oh shit, the Feldenkrais police will be knocking on the door any minute. But the phone rang more that week than it did any other week.
Yeah, yeah.
So I sometimes use the word pain, but perhaps as a question, you know, would you like to find a way to minimise your pain?
Yep. Or move away from pain.
Move away from pain.
You know, that's that kind of, so we're starting to use language in a quite a good way. Or get to know your pain and say goodbye, or, you know, that kind of thing.
As a part of an invitation to the person that is going to come to your workshop, is better than actually an affirmation.
Yeah. And if you're worried about it, just email the titles to your colleagues, to us. You know, but this will change. Is there anything else that anybody's read? What else did we pick up on, Jenny, that we wanted to sort of say we'll be lobbying to change it? Yeah, but we'll probably, these will be circulated for people to make comments about what to change, you know, in the sort of current culture and use of language. Yeah. And it's okay to have classes that are restricted. So, for example, if you wanted to run a class for Muslim women that was women only, that's okay, because you advertise it as such. You know, it's like the hydrophysios who run swim classes for Muslim women. They close the pool so that men can't come in. That's just so long as you're upfront about advertising this is for this group of people. It's in a positive way. This class is for this group of people, so that everyone who's not a Muslim woman knows, well, other women could come, but that's fine. You know, it's a focus. It's just like saying this is really good for golfers. Tennis players, be gone. No. All right. So with your ATM license to teach ATM, and Jenny will talk more about this. When you've got the certificate, you can charge. So you want to go through that. Where's the box? Oh, did you have something to say? Say it. Say it. Say it. Say it.
I was just going to go back a fair way, just with expectations for yourself and all your clients. When you're setting up expectations when people walk through your door, especially if they don't know what the method is, or have had a limited experience or what have you, you can, if you're doing a series of FIs or if you're doing a series of ATMs, you should start to go and notice a difference within, sort of 6 to 8 sort of classes. And if you're just not getting anything, well, then maybe that's the time to go and sit down and see if it's worth.
Yeah.
So that which gives you an intro to, don't run out the door straight away if you don't get it.
Yeah.
Give you an intro to fix it if things aren't quite working, and or to exit if it's just not working.
Yeah.
But that was,
it is always about managing expectations. These relationships, you're managing the expectation of what the relationship and the method's going to offer. And we know it's not necessarily a fast method. Some of you are here because you had instant change. That's not the norm for everybody. Other people, it's a real slow burn change. And you need to manage that. If someone has the expectation of a quick fix, managing that as it's a learning thing. And yes, some people do, learn to ski in 2 lessons, and some people take a lifetime. And yeah. And make room for all of those different motivations. That's your job, and that's where some specificity in the title of the workshop is helpful, but too much specificity is probably not helpful, because it will set up a very, very, very specific expectation that could come back to haunt you. Okay, teaching ATM.
Okay, as students in the Feldenkrais training program, you are required to go out and practice your skills. When you do this on a voluntary basis as part of your learning activities, whoever has determined who you're going to teach to and what you're going to teach them, etc., my understanding is that you're covered under the college insurance. Now, I spoke with the insurance people this morning. We're just trying to clarify, if you hire a hall to do that or use some other venue, it has been the understanding in the past that college insurance covers that as well. And so I can provide certificates of currency if community centres or hirers need to see that. The minute you start charging for your fees, which the majority of you will now be able to do, then you should have your own insurance. Well, if you want to be protected, you'll need your own insurance. Whether you bother or not is entirely up to you. It used to be the case that whilst you were a student, you got the student rate because you were a student, but you were starting to practice. Some time ago, they decided that if you're actually charging money, then you're charging money and you pay the practitioner rate. And so the student insurance actually was meaningless because you couldn't do anything. And so there wasn't any point having it, which is a bit stupid.
Okay. I didn't realise.
Most Feldenkrais practitioners who get their insurance through the recommended channels use OJ Gallagher as the insurer. Now, some of you may have insurance with them for other modalities, and you'll find that if you just let them know that you want to add Feldenkrais, it costs you $11 or some exorbitant amount like that. So you don't have to have separate insurance for everything that you do. And so people that may have physio or massage or whatever insurance, you may be able to just add on Feldenkrais for a nominal charge. To the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been any claims for people being damaged in our work. But I think the insurance costs about $220 a year or something, so it's not huge. However, when you're starting off with just maybe one class, it's obviously up to you to decide what you want to do. If you're hiring places to work, then they will expect you, as a rule, to have public liability. So that's...
So sorry, that insurance that you're talking about, professional insurance,
it's package, public liability and professional indemnity. And I will send you on the link to the application form.
So when you say $11, it's $11 per month? Or?
No, for the year. On top of what you're paying already, to add an extra modality is almost nothing.
2 coffees and a dirty chai or something. I never know what that is. One of my colleagues was. Anyway, doesn't matter. All right. So is everybody kind of clear about the pragmatics of if you want to?
There are other insurance companies. I periodically get emails from other companies that say we do fabulous cheap insurance for complementary therapies. But when I've looked into it, the prices are exactly the same anyway. They might look cheaper initially on the surface, but when you compare for the actual value of the kind of public liability or professional indemnity cover that venues want, they're all the same. So if you have another one, by all means, that's fine. Once you graduate, if you want to be able to have a provider number so that people can get rebates on their health fund, you will definitely need insurance. You will also need your first aid, and you will need to have your continuing education up to date each year. But at the moment, all you need... Well, that's an interesting thing. We have tried to find out whether we need working with children checks, and I asked for it to be done nationally, and the answer was, well, they have different rules in each state and blah, blah. So, because there was something, if you worked as part of a voluntary group, there was no charge. And so we were thinking of setting up some kind of free public clinic stuff so that we could all be volunteers and get our children things. But it's really unclear as to whether we're obliged to have them or not.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, particularly...
Yeah, look into it and get not just the children one, but they're working with vulnerable persons. That's because then you can work with older folk as well.
So if you want to go into a nursing home or if you want to go into a school, you may well need that. Will require.
Yeah.
If a parent brings a child to you for a personal session and they're in the room, is that an issue?
And it is for me, but that's because I've got a double thing happening. So I have DCSI and all that sort of stuff. But
so, I mean, if anyone sort of knows about those things and you want to do a bit of research on behalf of us, feel free, because it would be good to know. What I have asked the insurers to clarify for us is what records they expect us to keep. Now, my sense is, at the very least, you need to know the name and possibly the address, at least some contact details of the people who attend your classes, and keep a roll, so that if there is a claim made, you can at least check whether they came that day or whether they tripped over the dog and tried to blame it on going to a Feldenkrais class. Yeah, once you get to FI, at the moment there's no guidelines, and that's what I've asked them to clarify, hopefully in writing, because I think we need to know that.
Yeah. Yeah, so towards the end of the program, we'll go through a few different ways that you can record FI. We won't do it now, obviously, because it's not the right time, but for ATM, it's good practice to start with the attendance record. Yeah, and then we'll go through sort of documentation stuff later. With ATM, it's you're not offering an assessment. You're not offering anything like that. So there's no yeah.
It's good either to get them to sign on a sheet or for you to tick off your class list who turned up today, just, in case there is ever an issue. And one of the things you might want to think about is what information do you want to gather from people? Now, what do you do with it? You don't want information that you have to store safely and securely and all that sort of stuff. But you probably do want to know if there is some particular limitation or issue that might be relevant. So if you're teaching with U3A, for example, people who are members of that have their little name tag, and on the back they're supposed to have the name of a contact person if they happen to fall down faint and you need to call an ambulance. And some kind of personal address or whatever. But sometimes having just a little bit of paper that people put down whether there's any particular limitation and what they'd be interested in getting out of the class can be useful in terms of how you frame your lessons and that sort of thing.
Good.
I teach at a U3A organisation in not far away in Box Hill, and a couple of them actually require people doing any form of exercise because they're not able to differentiate that this is not normal exercise that they do get, that the client, the participants get permission from their GP to be able to attend.
Okay.
So that's just come in where I go, where I teach about a year ago. So I do that automatically with anybody that comes in, that it's a requirement that they have in enrolment. So just something to be mindful of.
Yep. Cool. All right. Yep. Well, I think it starts in April from private health for private health cover. I think it starts in April 2019. Is that right? What? Is it 18 or is it this year? Maybe you should come up this end of the room where the there's a reason why we don't, the sound up there's terrible. So the private health cover rebates for Feldenkrais have either been cut or are being cut. Along with Pilates, reflexology, homeopathy, acupuncture, Bowen.
Dry needling.
Yeah,
the government's actually mandated it, so the health funds cannot operate in theory. Because they're nice like that.
Yeah.
That's not quite what I've heard. But it's not quite what. Because the government, have said it's a natural therapy. There's not evidence-based.
Yeah.
And it's possibly up to the health funds themselves, but it's also going to be influenced by consumers. So if consumers go along or contact their health funds and say, well, I'm really benefiting from the Feldenkrais method, who knows whether they will or they won't. But I don't, so it's sort of...
We might get clarity on that.
We need clarity on it.
Yeah. I must admit, I thought it was Kevin's version, that it was being cut, and because we did the submissions, Carol Connors and I did submission. No, well, the guild was involved with that, and then she went to Canberra, and I was on the phone, championing it. Blah blah blah. That was a year or two ago, and I thought that I'd read in the Physio Journal actually about it being imminent. Yeah. So we'll let you know for sure.
My understanding is it wasn't a shoot to do or not, it was a you are not given 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's my understanding too. Yeah, well, we'll find out. So, any other professional conduct-y kind of questions? So for some people, this is all completely redundant. You don't need to know because you're not going to do it for a while or ever or whatever. Other people, it's just sowing a seed to think about. We can revisit these topics, and we'll put these resources and clarifications on the web. And of course, you can always email us.
On the knowledge base, you will probably notice there is a new section now called Policies, in which you will find these 2 documents. You will also find the Feldenkrais Institute policy on making up time and that sort of thing, which was in your original contract pretty much, but spells it out more clearly. And there's a policy or procedure on what to do if you feel that you've been,
if you've got a grievance.
A grievance, yeah. There's a process there, should you ever need to use it. Hopefully it's something that can be resolved in here, but if not, there's a process of what to go on with.
Just thinking of us going out and being able to teach ATM before we've completed our whole training. So what do we call ourselves? Are we calling us teachers? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that's what your certificate will say, I think. Yeah.
And it is provisional for the duration. You'll be awareness through movement teachers kind of under licence while you remain students. If you leave the program, that authority lapses. If you need to take a break from your training, then we'll transfer you into the next group so you can continue to teach if your intention is to come back. But once you graduate, then of course you can go on indefinitely.
Obviously use the word Feldenkrais ATM teacher or something.
Yes.
Yep. And, you know, in terms of future pacing, there's been ongoing debate ever since the trainings have started about whether it is useful for people to graduate as ATM teachers only and not go on with the FI side of things and be a full practitioner, as it were. So at the moment, there's still the international consensus is that it's one in, all in. You know, it's a practitioner is a practitioner who can offer FI and ATM no matter what they then choose to do. But however, you are the future, and if you think that something different, when you've got the benefit of, you know, experience, these discussions, I think, should always be on the table. I mean, the method has to be dynamic to needs, and so that's just an FYI. That, you know, that's kind of a discussion point. No one's ever taken that because everybody's been so in love with FI. But now that I'm on a one-woman mission to turn everyone onto ATM, maybe it will come up again. I don't know. All right, enough business stuff. Yes, thank you. That was a very, very Linda little polite way of saying, get on with it. Get on with it. Thank you. She's a good, powerful walker, that one. Got buns of steel. Maybe lie on your mat. Yeah, maybe. Can you tell? I'm in the moment. Yeah.